politics in all the countries are becoming much the same. The people versus the greedy bosses. And Leo is, we couldn't have, from the leadership of the labor movement as I know it, we couldn't have a person better situated to be the leader in this time of difficulty and challenge, but a great opportunity than Leo Gerard. So that's my first words of thanks and appreciation. I want to thank him for encouraging the book, and I encourage you all to read it. And then we can have a little discussion about it at some big convention somewhere. And I thank Leo for the invitation to this convention. I never expected to get to another convention. I've been going to conventions, steelworker conventions, for a long time. And many of you heard me speak so often that you can't possibly be interested in another speech. But I'm delighted to be here and to see so many of you. There are more of you here that I know than I expected. That disturbs me a little bit, because you're getting kind of old. And old people are lovely, but they shouldn't be running unions.
Easy now, easy now.
The old people, age isn't for sissies, has become my favorite saying. And the process of aging and fighting the disease that I struggle with all the time has certainly taught me a lot about health and understanding and looking after patients. They've been working me over. I had eye trouble back in the 80s, and as a result of that eye trouble in the 80s, when it came to taking off cataracts, the specialist said to me with the eye that had been involved in the 80s, said, everything's loose in there. I said, well, lots of people have told me everything's loose in there, but you're the first one who claims to be able to prove it. Then more recently, I'm running around in this rotten wheelchair. Somebody asked me how I like the wheelchair. I said I'd like to turn it in for a new staff car. But I've fallen on my head 3 times. And each time my skull has come through purely, uncracked, which surely proves I'm a hard-headed son of a bitch. And I've been told that many times by people with less expertise than those who've been working on me recently. Anyhow, I want to talk a little bit. Oh no, I got something else I want to do. SOAR has reached its 25th anniversary this year and just finished a wonderful convention. And I understand that the SOAR executive have been invited to the platform, and if so, I'd like them to stand up and be recognized for a minute. Now, I next want to say what the book isn't, which is maybe a backwards way of being a book salesman, but this is a new job for me. But it isn't a history of the trade union movement in America. It has some historical references and some historic knowledge. But the job of writing a history of the American labor movement, or the Canadian labor movement for that matter, or of any labor movement, is an enormous task. It requires all kinds of research and all kinds of work that I wasn't equipped or prepared to do, and all kinds of detail. So it isn't the history of the labor movement. It's the story of one guy's experience in the labor movement. And I wanted to tell this story because labor does not write enough about itself. The people that write about labor are academics and ideologists of one kind or another, and they have axes to grind in most cases. And there's not enough known about the labor movement. I wanted to write about what it's really like in the modern labor movement. We aren't a bunch of crooks. In all these tests of where your profession stands, we come out down at the bottom with used car salesmen. That's rotten. The most recent stuff I know about finances, for example, proves that union officials are more honest in their financial dealings get in less trouble than clericals or lawyers. So it isn't a history. What it is it attempts to be is a realistic story of one guy's experience in the labor movement. And that's built around the notion that what we're about really, we're about being a fighting organization, as Leo described this morning so eloquently. But that fighting organization is grounded around the people that make it up, and particularly the leaders that make it up. I consider trade union people a cut above everybody else. For one reason, they are their brother's keeper. And labor movement people are women and men on the shop floor and the office typewriter, or well, don't have typewriters anymore, but those fancy machines. They're those people who are prepared to take on somebody else's troubles, somebody else's unfairness they've been dealt, and fight for fair play and fight for decent conditions and take on the boss. And you know that takes a lot of guts in the beginning. You've been told when you volunteer or you're asked to become a staff, a grievance man, grievance committee man, or a steward, you're asked if you're interested in doing this and that you have an army of people behind you, all the other stewards, and we have training courses and programs and books, and you're all set. You'll get a lot of help. But one day, the first day you got to take your grievance in, you find yourself there with the foreman all by yourself. Where's that army? Well, that army's providing information and support out there, but each individual has to have the guts and the courage to take on the challenge and fight it out. And trade unionists are people willing to do that. And that's why we can talk about being a fighting union. And so the purpose of my book is to describe that process of representation, to use a fancier word for it. The more people we have prepared to represent their fellow workers, the more people we train in that, the more people who see in staff jobs and full-time local union jobs an opportunity for work that they would like, the stronger and better we'll be if they have the training and the guts and the spirit to get out and do it. And if they don't, all is lost. Now, I believe they do. I believe the American and Canadian workers have demonstrated time after time they have the guts for the struggle. And so have workers in other countries. The French workers put down tools at the drop of a hat. As Lloyd McBride used to say to me, you Canadians like to make speeches, and you make speeches at the drop of a hat, and you'll drop your own hat. The people are prepared to do that. The strikes that our people have gone through in my time in the Steelworkers, Ravenswood, 20 months chasing Mark Rich around and winning, and George was able to lead the workers back in the plant and kick the scabs out, marvelous. And strike after strike, the U.S. Steelworkers went 6 months in the heart of the worst, most miserable time. I think, as a matter of fact, they helped save the industry with that strike, because I think it cut out that supply of steel, and all the other companies got a chance to sell a little more steel. And I think it was kind of we didn't plan it that way. I'd like to say we had that good a plan, but we didn't. But I think that's what happened. In any event, people had the guts to do it. So representation is a key part of this. And young people being trained for representation is a key part of it. I'm optimistic about the world. I know it looks like hell out there now, but a lot of the troubles we see are people rebelling for freedom and democracy. And after all, what representation in the trade union movement is freedom and democracy on the job. It's always seemed crazy to me. We train our kids in school to be thinkers, to solve problems, to think things through, make their own decisions, and then we send them off to work in the most autocratic, authoritarian kinds of workplaces that are run by old-fashioned bosses in far too many cases, and where the workers are asked to leave their brains at the time clock, and the boss will tell them what to do. I had a foreman once on an early job when I was going to school and working to make up a little money. It was a scab job, not a scab job, but a non-union job. And this foreman never said a word. He just smoked a cigarette and pointed from one rotten job to another, from piling bricks up in one place to shoveling up the scrap in another, to carrying heavy metal down plank roads. When I'd go down the planks out of a freight car, if it started to tip, I was gone. The barrel and me and the wheelbarrow and everything went. Some little guys half my size, 3 times my age, 10 times my strength, never dumped one in the stall, just walked out like they were walking down the street. So these are all important issues that we've got to have the strength and the determination to do this representation thing and to do it firmly and be in support of the kind of labor movement we've been talking about. When it gets right down to it, the heart of the problem is greed versus decent common sense and caring for people. Greed is what's got us into all these messes. And done it from the beginning of the capitalist system. Started with Carney back in the steel business back at the turn of the last century. Get all the money you can. He had the most money of any guy in the world. And we've seen that happen time and time again, and we see a depression follow it as the greed is always excessive and they get rid of the regulations. And it's greed against common sense and decency. And that's steelworker representation. That's stewards representing people. That's supporting people and supporting issues. My 2 favorite quotes are Sam Gompers. One from Sam Gompers, the founder of the AFL-CIO, when he said, "What labor wants is more." And for years that quote, that's all they said Sam Gompers said. But the real quote is much longer than that. Sam Gompers said we wanted more schools and fewer jails. We wanted more jobs and less poverty. We wanted more opportunities for the good things of life. That's what labor wants. A chance to have a decent life. And Tommy Douglas, the leader of the NDP in Canada, said, and a number of things that were famous, he talked about in his mouse story about the mice, the white mice, or the white cats and the black cats governing the mice. Talked about the mice running the government themselves, and he said even though the cats chew them up, an idea can't be contained, an idea spreads. The idea of democracy and freedom spreads and can't be contained. And Tommy Douglas said, be of good cheer. The time is, it's not too late to build a better world. And that's the message I want to leave with you in these 10 minutes, is it's not too late to build a better world. And let's build it. We need it desperately. Our kids need it, our grandkids need it. Let's build a better world. And let's start doing it the day we leave this convention and go back home and go to work. Thank you.
Love you.
That was 10 minutes.
You did good.
Good job, boss.